Hi there, you are about to learn how to build super fast, highly performant dynamic websites using Gatsby JS, which makes the hardest part of building an amazing digital experience really simple. This is a 3-hour tutorial that's going to teach you how to build your own powerful Gatsby site by learning the fundamentals of how Gatsby JS works. This tutorial is a part of a full course on Udemy, which gives you full lifetime access to over 15 hours of quality video content and 15 downloadable resources. You also get certification upon completing the course. This full course is a really detailed course that is going to teach you everything you need from scratch to build stunning websites and applications with the Gatsby framework. First of all, I'm going to teach you all the key fundamental concepts in React while working on some really exciting projects. We are going to cover concepts like package managers such as npm and yarn, the React DOM, JSX, components and props, events and states, lists, conditional rendering, routing, and many other useful concepts. This will help you build a solid foundation of how React works, improve your overall confidence as a front-end developer, and adequately prepare you to start playing with Gatsby JS. After that, we are going to cover a whole lot of relevant topics about Gatsby. I'm going to teach you how to set up all the tooling you will need to get your first Gatsby application running. We'll explore how to build static sites that uses Graphql to pull in data from multiple sources, such as our local file system and Markdown. We'll also connect our site to a headless CMS, such as Contentful, that is going to serve as the backend for our site. By the time we are done with this, you will begin to appreciate how powerful Gatsby is and how its huge ecosystem of plugins offer a great development experience. Because I want you to gain the best hands-on experience as possible, I'll also teach you how to use a real live third-party event API to add dynamic content to our Gatsby application. And finally, I'll show you how to deploy all the amazing projects we develop throughout this course to the cloud. Now, you can go ahead and take the full 15-hour plus course on Udemy for just $12.99. And that's the cheapest you can get for this course. The official price for this course is soon going to increase from $39.99 to $134.99. So you get a huge 90% discount when you enroll now. I've included a link to the course in the description below with the coupon code already applied. So just click on that link and it will bring you to this same page where you can click buy now to enroll in this full 15.5-hour course. Thanks a lot for taking the time to watch this intro, and without taking any more of your time, let's jump in to this 3-hour Gatsby tutorial. So Gatsby JS is a free open source framework for building fast and powerful websites and web applications. Okay, so Gatsby JS is based on React and it helps you build these fast and websites.
So Gatsby JS uses GraphQL to help you pull data from just about anywhere, whether it's a CMS like Contentful, WordPress, or a Markdown file, or APIs, or databases. All right, so this is one of the reasons that makes Gatsby really great to work with. Gatsby is built with, because it's a React framework, it's built on React, and it uses React JS for its templating, and you can start Gatsby by using CSS. All right, and like I said, it offers you with it's built with also GraphQL, which allows you to just pull data from anywhere. You can deploy Gatsby applications to providers like Netlify, Surge, and AWS, etc. And because Gatsby JS is a static site generator, which means it's going to generate HTML, CSS, and bundled JavaScript files ahead of time. And then these files that are built, you can upload them anywhere on any server, right? So it's just like normal HTML pages that you can just upload to your server. One of the most exciting things is the fact that Gatsby JS is part of this ecosystem called the Jamstack. Okay, so the Jamstack is a new standard way of building web applications by using Git workflows and modern build tools that helps you pre-render content, which you can serve to a CDN and also make them dynamically available through APIs and serverless functions. So having Gatsby as part of this new exciting way of building web applications is a perk for me personally. Also, another thing that you'd also want to consider is Gatsby offers you a lot of speed, and it also offers this great developer experience, because Gatsby has this great plugin ecosystem that you can just get a plugin for just about anything that you want to do. It makes developing applications so much easier, and it also has a good documentation, so it makes it very easy to learn new stuff and also get help when you're working on projects. So these are some of the reasons why I personally like using Gatsby a lot. And then there are some competition like CRE, which is Create React App, and then Next.js, which also offers some server-side rendering and all of that, right? And sometimes there's these conversations around when you should use Gatsby, when you should use Next.js, and all of that. Let's talk about this stuff in the next video. Alright, so in the previous video we spoke a lot about Gatsby, but I also wanted you guys to be aware that sometimes Gatsby is not always the go-to solution for building all kinds of web applications or websites, and there are also some other solutions out there that you might also want to consider. So let's talk about these guys in isolation. Earlier I mentioned that Gatsby is a static site generator. Okay, so what a static site generator is basically a script which takes in some data or content and template and processes these stuff, and then outputs a folder full of the resultant pages and assets. Okay, so think of it this way: if for a normal web application or website, you would have to wait for a user to request a particular page, all right, to make a request for a particular page, and then the server is going to return that page. Now, for using something like Gatsby, which is a static site generator, you don't have to wait for a user to request this page. Instead, at build time, all these pages are generated ahead of time. Okay, so that's how static site generators like Gatsby work. Now, when you look at CRA, which is basically Create React App, now if you have some experience in building React applications, you might already be familiar with Create React App. So this uses client-side rendering, which means that when you make a request to the server to view this site, the server is actually going to return just a single page, in most cases the index page, and then all other content will be dynamically rendered or inserted inside of this page. Alright, so it's basically just one page, and then the content is being swapped within that single page, so everything is rendered on the client side. Okay, so that's how Create React App also works. Now, Next.js also uses server-side rendering, which is almost similar to the traditional web applications where the client or the user is going to make a request for a particular page, and then the server is going to render this page or going to serve up this page. Okay, so I want us to discuss these three solutions or these three technologies in terms of SEO, in terms of also how frequent our data is going to change, and also simplicity, how easy it is to set up and also deploy. And then we'll also analyze what instances where it's best to use Gatsby or where Gatsby shines. So let's do this. So in terms of SEO, Gatsby and Next.js is really great when you are looking to build a site that you want to have a lot of SEO. Okay, you need good SEO. You might want to go for Next.js and Gatsby JS, because with this, for Next.js, the content is being rendered on a server, and Gatsby JS, the pages are going to be generated, static pages are going to be generated, which means that these web crawlers can actually crawl on this website, and it's good for SEO. Now, when you look at Create React App, because the content of the site is dynamically being inserted into the page by running a JS script, it's not really good for SEO, because when you first load the page, it's actually empty, there's no content in there, and then the content is being dynamically inserted. So this is not really good for SEO. So when you are looking to build a site or an application that you need really good SEO, these are the things that you want to consider: Next.js or Gatsby JS. Okay. And then you also need to consider how frequent your data is going to change. So if you are building an application or a site that your data is going to change frequently, Next.js and Create React App are the guys that you want to go with. Okay, so Gatsby JS, although is a great tool, it's not a solution that you might want to use when you want to build a site that the data changes frequently. So if you are looking to build something like a blog, a blog posts do not change that frequently, right? So Gatsby JS is really great. But if you are looking to build something like, let's take for instance, you are building something like a to-do app, right? So the list of to-dos are going to change. You might have new list of to-dos and all of that. And for something like that, you might want to consider Create React App or Next.js, right? I know that's a silly example, but it works. And also when you look at simplicity, once again, this is just my opinion, right? And people might have different opinions. I'm looking at simplicity in terms of how easy it is to set up this stuff, and also in terms of deployment. Okay, so in my opinion, Gatsby JS is quite easier to set up, and also when deploying your Gatsby application, because it's basically static sites that are going to be generated, you can easily upload them to any server. And same for Create React App. And now Next.js, you have to deal with setting up the server and all of that, and that's not so simple, comparing it to these guys, and that's just my opinion. Once again, I'm sure people would have different opinions as opposed to this. So this is what I think. These are the things that I personally consider before choosing either of these tools to build a particular application or website. Now let's look at some real world scenarios. Okay, so let's look at building a landing page for a company. Okay, so something like Shopify.com, for instance. If you take Create React App, it's pretty simple. It's easy to create one, but in this case, we are going to lack SEO. Okay, because the content is being dynamically inserted into the page, and it's not really great for SEO. Now if you look at Next.js for building a site like this, since everything is being served from the server, it's really great for SEO. And also, since the content is static, you can take advantage of static exports. Gatsby JS, we are dealing with static content. The content for a landing page is not going to change so often, and so it's perfect for Gatsby. and you could also take advantage of the huge ecosystem of plugins that Gatsby has, all right, like the Gatsby image, inline critical CSS, and all of that. So for something like this, Gatsby is really perfect for building a landing page. If you want to build something like a to-do app like Google Keep, if you consider Create React App, for some application like this, you don't need to consider SEO, okay? And to-dos would be fetched, in the browser by calling APIs. The only downside to this is users would see loading to-dos or a loader, okay, which, in my opinion, is not a really great user experience. So if you are looking to build an application where users do not, something that users would have to log in to, something like a dashboard really, and that you don't really consider SEO, Create React App shines there. Now for this application, with Next.js, you don't have to show any users a loading animation or whatever, because the list of to-dos can be fetched from the server itself. So it's also really good. It's really great using Next.js. For Gatsby JS, to-dos are something that could change anytime, right? So in this case, the content is very dynamic, and you can't take advantage of Gatsby here, because I can't imagine generating HTML files for to-dos every time a to-do changes. Okay, Gatsby is not really ideal for this. So in this case, we are going to go with Next.js, because I can also take advantage of server-side rendering here. So we want to build something like a blog, something like medium.com. Create React App definitely lacks SEO, all right, and users should be able to read the post without having to wait for any loading animation. So Create React App is not good for building something like this. Next.js is much better than Create React App, because users can just read the post up front without having to wait for a loading animation, and also it's really great for SEO as well. Gatsby JS, blog posts are static, they don't change frequently, so Gatsby JS is really good for building something like this, and you can, you just serve HTML pages, and then you can also trigger a webhook if you are serving the content from a CMS. Gatsby also offers great SEO. So in this case, we are going to go with Gatsby JS, because Gatsby JS is really going to shine for an application like this. What about building a simple calculator? Do you think Create React App is going to be best for this, or Next.js, or Gatsby JS? Let me know what you think, right? So before we start building our first Gatsby site, there are a few things we need to set up, and the first is Node.js. Okay, so we need to install Node.js on our system. Node.js is basically a JavaScript runtime, and we want to be able to use Node.js npm to be able to install packages and all of that. So we need to first install Node.js on our system. So to install Node.js, you can just go to nodejs.org, and then you can choose the latest version or the long-term support version for your system, and just install. I'm on a Mac OS system, so I can just click on this to download. Or you can also go to other downloads if you are using any other operating system, and then you can choose your preferred operating system and then click to download. Okay, so let me just download for Mac OS, and then this is going to download the Node.js package. Okay, so once this is downloaded, all you need to do is click and follow the prompt to install Node.js, right? So you just click continue and just follow the prompts throughout, and then just install Node.js. Okay, so I'm just going to put in my password. And then this should start installing Node.js on my system. Okay, so we've successfully been able to install Node.js on our system, and once that is done, you can confirm by going to your terminal or your command line. Okay, so there's my command line here, If you are on a Windows, you can use your Windows command line or the Windows PowerShell, and then you can type node here -v to check the version of Node.js that you are currently running. So currently I'm on Node.js version 14, which is the latest one that I just installed. Okay, so this is how to install Node.js using the site. So another way you can install Node.js is by using Homebrew. Okay, so if you want to install Node.js using Homebrew, you first need to check whether you have Homebrew installed. So you can do brew version to check the version of Homebrew that you are running. I currently have no Homebrew installed on my system, and then once you have this, you can just run brew install and then the package, right? So node, I think it's node, and then this should start. Yeah, so already it says I need to update my brew, but you can see it's already installing brew. And I might have to upgrade my brew to be able to install Node.js. If you don't have brew installed on your system, you can just go to this site, the official documentation, and then follow the instructions here to get brew installed. And you'd also have to install Xcode on your system. That's if only you're on a Mac OS, right? So let's get Node.js installed on our system, and then let's move on to the next thing. So if you got Node successfully installed on your system, Node offers you something called NPM, which is Node Package Manager, which is basically a package manager. A package manager is something that allows you to install third-party packages or libraries into your application. So if you want to verify whether you have NPM installed on your system, all you have to do is go to your command line or your terminal. If you are on Windows, you can open up the Windows command line or the Windows PowerShell, and then just type npm -- version. Okay, and this is going to show you the current version of npm that you are running. So if you see this successfully, it means you have npm running on your system. Now another package manager out there that is my personal favorite really is Yarn. Okay, so Yarn is an alternative to npm, and the interesting thing is you would need one of the ways of installing Yarn is by first installing npm, and then you can use npm to install Yarn via your command line, or you can also install Yarn using Homebrew if you have Homebrew. So to install Yarn, all we have to do is go to our terminal or our command line, and then just type in npm. Okay, so we're going to use npm to install Yarn. So type npm install, and then you want to install this globally. Okay, so you say -g or -- global and then Yarn. Okay, so we want to install Yarn globally on our system. So you hit enter, and then this is going to run the command to install Yarn on your system. So I've already got Yarn installed, which is this current version, and I'm having some errors here, which is saying that this file already exists on my system, right? But if you don't already have Yarn installed, they should go ahead and install Yarn. So to verify whether I have Yarn installed, I just need to run Yarn -- version. Okay, and this is going to show me the current version of Yarn I have installed. So yeah, go right ahead and install Yarn on your system. And so one other thing that you need to install before you can start working with Gatsby is Git. Okay, so Git is an open source version control system, and so Gatsby uses Git behind the scenes to download and install the required files for your starter. Okay, so we also need to install Git quickly on our system to be able to build our Gatsby sites. And so to install Git, you just go to this website, okay, or on Google you can just type install Git, and that will bring you to this website, and then you can click downloads here, and then that's going to bring you to this page where you can choose the downloader for your preferred operating system. So since I'm on a Mac OS, I'm going to click on Mac OS, and then it gives me the ways that I can install Git on my system. So if you have Homebrew installed, you can run brew install Git, or you can also install with Xcode. Okay, so if you don't have any of these things and you just want to install that directly, you can click on this installer here, and then you download the installer package. So you can click the installer package here, and then you can download that to your system. Okay, so once you have that, you just follow the prompts to install Git. Okay, so this is downloading, and I'm hoping that it doesn't take too long. Yeah, it's the same for any of the other operating systems. So this is done downloading, so I can just click this, and then I can just install Git. Okay, so you can double click. Open. Yeah, so all I need to do is click and follow these prompts to install Git to my system. So I just install and then type in my password once again. Okay, and then this is going to install Git to my system. Okay, so this is done installing. If I want to check whether I have Git, all I need to do is go to my command line and then type in git -- version. Okay, like this, and then yeah, so currently I have this version of Git running on my system. So hopefully you're able to install this for whatever operating system that you are running. Alright, so the next thing that we need to install is the Gatsby command line interface, or the Gatsby CLI. Okay, so this is a tool that allows us to quickly create new Gatsby sites and also run commands for developing Gatsby sites. So we can it's made available as an npm package, and we can install this using npm or yarn. So to install the Gatsby CLI using npm, all we do is go to our command line interface or the terminal. That's if you are on Mac or Linux, or you can also use the Windows PowerShell to install this. So here, what you need to do is just type npm install, and they want to install this globally, so you need to add the dash and the global flag, which is -g or -- global. Okay, so any of these is okay. So -g, and then you type Gatsby CLI. Okay, so this typing this and hitting enter should help you install Gatsby CLI. Or you can also use yarn if you like. So to use yarn, you just need to type yarn add, okay, and then this. Okay, so yarn add and then global flag and then the Gatsby CLI. So this is going to install Gatsby globally on our system, and then once this is done, we can actually use this CLI to start creating Gatsby sites. So this is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause the video and come back when this is done. Alright, so this is done installing, and you can see here that it's saying Gatsby CLI and the current version, which is 2.1.9. Come on, 2.19.2, pardon me. And so when you see this, it means that your Gatsby CLI is successfully installed on your system. Okay. Yeah, so in the previous video we saw how to install the Gatsby CLI, and by now you should have your Gatsby CLI properly installed on your system. And so in this video I just want to show you some of the quick commands that you can run in the Gatsby CLI. Okay, so to get access to all the commands, all you need to do is type Gatsby -- help, and this is going to give you a list of commands that you can run using your Gatsby CLI. Okay, so you can see a list of commands here. Gatsby develop to start a development server, Gatsby serve to build your Gatsby project, and a whole lot of commands are here. So whenever you need a quick refresh on some of the commands that you can run to do some specific task, you can always type Gatsby help, okay, in your CLI, and they should pull up this interface where you can see all the commands that are available in your interface. So one command that I'm particularly interested in is the Gatsby new command. Okay, so you can see Gatsby new command, and some arguments that you pass here. So this command helps you create a new Gatsby site or a new Gatsby project. All right, and Gatsby help is what we just typed to see all these commands, and you can also get information about your Gatsby version by running Gatsby version. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea of all the available commands that are that are accessible in the Gatsby CLI. So sometimes when you are trying to install the Gatsby CLI globally, you run into some permission issues. Okay, and I just wanted to show you how to fix that. And this is not just limited to Gatsby, but sometimes when you are trying to install packages globally, you run into these permission issues, especially if you don't have super user or an admin privilege using the command line, right? So if you are not a super user or you don't have sudo access. Okay, so I just wanted to show you some ways that you can go around this. One way to fix this is to reinstall or to download and install the Node.js Node version manager, which is basically the Node.js. So you can just click this link and then you can download the Node.js and reinstall that, and once that is done, you should be able to install packages globally again. Another way to go about this is to manually change the default directory where npm should install packages. Okay, and to do that, you need to follow these instructions. So you need to actually follow this set of instructions, and then once that is done, you would be able to install packages globally again, and you should be able to install the Gatsby CLI globally on your system. Okay, so in case you run into this issue, I just wanted to show you a quick way to fix that. So I'm actually going to attach this link to the as part of the resources to this section, so that you can use that as a reference to fix this issue. Alright, so once we've got all the tooling and basic setup done, we are going to build a simple application, or this actually a simple website, and with this we are going to learn all the basic or fundamentals of Gatsby JS, like creating a Gatsby site, creating components in Gatsby, creating pages, styling, all the different ways that we can style our Gatsby application, routing and navigation, all of that stuff, right? So we are going to learn all of these fundamental concepts whilst building this simple website here. I know it's nothing fancy, but the goal here is to be able to learn all the fundamental concepts, and then we can apply these concepts to any website or any applications that we are building. Yeah, so let's just get started. Alright, so to start working on the project, I'm actually going to create a new folder inside this folder here, right, for the course. So inside here, I'm just going to create a new folder close to the React Bootcamp folder. So I'm just going to call this Gatsby project. Okay, so you can actually create this folder anywhere you like. It can just be on your desktop, and this is where I'm going to create all the Gatsby projects or the Gatsby site that we're going to work on in this course. Okay, so I'm going to quickly open this newly created folder in my command line or the terminal. Okay, so I'll just open this in my terminal. Okay, so I have this folder open in my terminal. So what I'm going to do is inside this folder, I'm going to create a new Gatsby project. Okay, so to create a new Gatsby project, we are going to use the Gatsby CLI to create this new Gatsby project, and then all you need to do is run Gatsby new. Okay, so the Gatsby new command, and then followed by the name of the project. Okay, so Gatsby new followed by the name of the project. So I'm going to call this Zaki Sports. I know it's a silly name, but I'm just going to use it. You can call this whatever you like, and then optionally you can add a link to the starter library that you want to use. Okay, so Gatsby creates projects, new projects from starter libraries, and it does this by fetching it from the respective GitHub repositories. If you don't add any link to the starter libraries, it's going to use its default starter. Okay, and that's what we want. So I'll just hit enter, and then this is going to create a new project inside that folder. Okay, so a new Gatsby project. So you can see here that it's cloning into that folder. Okay, and it's doing this behind the scenes using Git. Okay, so this is going to take a while. I'm going to pause the video and come back when this is done. Alright, so when you see this, it means that you've successfully created a new Gatsby project. So you can see here it's giving me some commands that I can run. So it says I should cd into this project, and then I can run Gatsby develop to start the development server. Okay, so once you see this, it means that the creating the project was successful. So hopefully you were able to do this. Let me show you how to run the project in the next video. Alright, so to run our project, I'm going to cd into the folder by doing cd Zaki Sports. That's the name of the project, and then whilst I'm inside this folder, sorry, I have a typo in here, so it's supposed to be Zaki Sports. Okay, and whilst I'm inside this folder, so I would actually like to open this folder in my VS Code. Okay, so in my code editor, and then I like to use my VS Code inbuilt terminal to run commands. Okay, so I'll just do code, and then this should open the project in my VS Code. Okay, so optionally you can also run the commands in here. So you can run Gatsby develop here to also run the command, but I like to do this in my VS Code, right? So I'll just go ahead and do it here. So in my VS Code, I'm going to open the integrated terminal, and you can see all these files are generated by the Gatsby CLI for my project. We'll talk about this setup later, but right now what I'm interested in is just go to my inbuilt terminal, and then from here I'm going to run the command to start my project in the development server, right, which is Gatsby develop. Once again, you can run this here. Okay, so I'll just run Gatsby develop, okay, and then hit enter. So you always use this command whenever you want to run your project in the development server. Okay, so the first time you run this, it's gonna take a while, but not too long, right? So this is building our project, and then once it's done, it's going to spin out a link for us to test our project, right? So on a local host, and usually it runs on localhost 8000 for by default. Okay, localhost port 8000. So this is building our development bundle for our development server. Okay, so yeah, and when you see this, it means I successfully built the site. So you can just click use command and then click to go to the browser, or you can just copy this link right here and then just go to your browser and then paste that here. So I'm just going to close this, and then I'll just paste this right here, and then this should show the default Gatsby starter. Okay, so this is the default Gatsby starter, and so once you see this, it means that you successfully created a new Gatsby project, and then you can start editing this to make it your own. Yay, I'm excited. Alright, so in the previous video we were able to successfully create a new Gatsby project, and we're able to run that project in our development server. Now before we start talking about the Gatsby environment, there are a few things that I would like to show you. So one thing that's useful in developing, in improving your development experience, especially working with JavaScript, React, and Gatsby, is the Prettier extension. Okay, so Prettier is a syntax highlighter that helps you to better format your code. So I just wanted to show you, in case you don't have Prettier installed, this is very helpful. So you can install Prettier. I already have this installed, So you can install Prettier, and Prettier is going to help you highlight your syntax for JavaScript and CSS and HTML and all of that. So that's one useful tool that I wanted to show you guys. Also, another thing that I wanted to show you is bracket colorizer. So that's also another bracket pair colorizer. I've also got this installed. So this also helps you to see to match your bracket pairs, all right, so that sometimes it can get really frustrating when you're trying to find where a parenthesis ends or where a bracket ends. Okay, so I find this tool very useful to help me. It just assigns different colors to these brackets. Okay, so these are not required. Okay, these are not required at all. They are just tools that I thought would be great. It will help in your development experience. So these are not required. Also, it's not compulsory to use VS Code. Okay, it's just my personal favorite. You can actually use any text editor that you are familiar with or you are comfortable with. So yeah, these are some stuff that I wanted to show you. So if you are interested, you can install this, and then let's get started. So when you first create a Gatsby project, you are going to see all these files and folders being generated for you. Okay, so when we run the Gatsby new command and created a new Gatsby project, it automatically installed all these files and these projects for us, and this is what we're going to use in developing our Gatsby site. Okay, so this cache folder previously wasn't here, but when we ran the Gatsby develop, that's when it actually generated this folder for us. So this folder is where it's going to cache all the files, so that whenever we make any changes in our project and we run Gatsby build, it's going to build a project again and then save that in our browser during development. Now this node models folder, so we have this node models folder. This is where all the external packages that are required for your app to successfully run are going to be installed. Okay, so there's a folder that you don't want to mess with. And then you have the public folder, the source folder, and then the git ignore file. So this is where you put all the files and folders that you don't want to push to your GitHub repository. Okay, so there are so many other files here: the Gatsby browser, the Gatsby config file, the Gatsby node file, Gatsby SSR for server-side rendering, the package.json file. If you are using yarn, you see a yarn.log file and all of that. So this is basically what you would find in a typical Gatsby project. So we are going to look at each of these folders, at least the most important ones, and these folders and the files, and see what each of them does. So the first thing I want to talk about is the package.json file. So this is where this file gives you information about the project itself, right? So the name of the project, description, all of that, the version, the author. So you can change all these stuff. You can change the author, because we are using we built our Gatsby project based off of a starter template which was designed by this guy, I think. That's why his name is here, but you can edit that. You can edit the name of the application itself and all of that, but the most important thing here is the dependencies section. All right, so this gives you information about all the external packages that this project or your project uses or is currently installed in your project, and the versions as well. Okay, so whenever you install any third-party plugin or library into your application, it's going to be added to the list of dependencies. Okay, and then you also have some developer dependencies like Prettier, and also you if you remember, we installed Prettier as an extension here as well. And so this package.json file is a very important file. it also gives you access to all the scripts that you can run in your project. So if you guys remember, we ran Gatsby build, Gatsby develop to run our site in the development server, and that was possible because we have that as a script here. Okay, so these are all the available scripts that you can run. So this file here is a file that you don't want to mess with, because once you delete this file, you actually have lost all the information needed to successfully run this project. So one thing that you need to note is when you delete your node models folder, because you have in this file, you already have a list of all the dependencies here. You can reinstall these dependencies by running yarn install if you're using yarn, or npm install if you're using npm, and that's going to recreate this node models folder and then reinstall all these dependencies in here. So this is a file that you definitely don't want to mess with, but so it's important that you keep track of the things that are in this file and make sure that this file is always available in your project. So there are some other config files as well, which is the Gatsby browser file. So this is where you can interact with Gatsby browser's API, and we are going to look at that later. But basically, it can help you respond to actions within the browser, and it helps you wrap your site in some additional components as well. So the Gatsby config file is also where you actually configure your Gatsby project itself. So you see your site has some metadata and all of that, description, the author and all of that, but once again, the part that I'm really interested in is the plugin section. Okay, so this is where you also configure all the plugins that you are going to install in your application. If you remember, we mentioned that Gatsby has a huge ecosystem of plugins, and that makes development really easy. So this is where you configure all those plugins to work in your application. So there are some other config files as well, like the Gatsby node, which also helps you to do some pretty awesome stuff. And then you also have the Gatsby SSL file, which if you want to make use of Gatsby's server-side rendering API, you can also do that here. So these are basically some of the config files that are available in your Gatsby project. So one other important folder that I want us to look at is the public folder, okay, or the public directory. So this folder is what actually contains all the assets in our project and the static files. Okay, so whenever we build our project, we are done building our site or designing our site, and then we build our site using the Gatsby build command. The static files that are generated for our final site are going to be put inside this folder. Okay, so this is where you can see a static folder here. So this is where the final build for our project, the static files are going to be generated and put inside this folder. Okay, so inside this folder, that's where we actually grab the files here and then upload them to our server. Okay, so what you'd want to do is once you run Gatsby build and it's finished building the static files, all you do is you select all the files here and then you zip them, and then that's what you upload on your server. Okay, so that's what the public folder is for. We are not going to be working a lot with this folder unless we are actually done designing our website or application, and then we run Gatsby build, and then the static files are going to be built and inserted in this folder, and then we can grab these and upload on our server. So the SRC folder is probably the one of the most important folders in here, and that's what we'll be using most of the time. We are going to spend almost all our development time working in this folder. Okay, so inside the source folder, that's where we're going to create components for our project. So components are basically smaller pieces in our UI. So we can create a component for a navbar, we can create a component for our footer and all of that. So we also have images. If you have some images that you're going to use in your project. We can keep this stuff here, and then this is also where we build our pages. Okay, so all the pages that we are going to have in our application is also going to be here. So the source folder is mainly where we are going to spend almost all our time. You can actually add some other stuff, a lot of stuff, anything that any code that you're going to write or any assets that you're going to directly use in your code is going to be inside this source folder. Okay, so this is where we're going to spend majority of our time. So in the next set of videos, we'll look at how to create our own components, we'll look at how to create pages and all of that, right? And we'll be doing all of that inside of this src folder or the source folder. Now that we know our way around our Gatsby setup, let's look at how we can modify a pages to be sure that we can actually make changes to our existing Gatsby site. So currently, this is what our starter looks like. The Gatsby site that we just generated, this is what it looks like. Let's see if we can make some changes to this file. Okay, so if you remember from the last video, we mentioned that the src folder is where all the action is going to be, right? So if I go under pages right now, I can see several pages here. Now the current page that we see here is the index page, okay, because that's the home page and that's the entry file, and you can see hi people, welcome to your new Gatsby site and all of that. So that's what's being displayed here. All right, so let's try changing some of this stuff and see if our Gatsby application works. All right, so I'm just going to clear all this stuff. All right, maybe I'll just clear all this stuff, and then I'll have an h1 that says hi, welcome to our new Gatsby site. Okay, then maybe we can throw in some paragraph as well, and then maybe we just generate some random text, right? So some lorem ipsum text, or maybe we just say so stay tuned. Okay, so stay tuned for some awesomeness. Okay, all right, great. So we save this, and then let me start my development server again. Remember, if you want to start your development server, you run Gatsby develop, okay, to start. So that's a typo. I don't know why I keep doing this. So Gatsby develop, okay, and then this should start the development server, and then we run this in the browser. All right. Alright, so once this is done, you can see it. We can actually see our site here, right? Localhost port 8000, which is the same link here. So I'm just going to refresh the browser, and then we see hi, welcome to our new Gatsby site, and then you have this thing right here. So when you are developing, you can keep your server running, and then you can make some more changes. Okay, so let me take out this. And then I'll probably put a div here, and then I'll put a div here again instead of using the layout, and then I'll save. Then you see that this rebuilds again. Okay, and then when we go here, we see hi, welcome to our new Gatsby site without any styling or whatsoever. All right, so this is super cool. We are able to actually edit our Gatsby site, and then we are going to transform this into our own nice website. Alright, so in the last video we saw how to make some updates to our UI, and then what we did was we went to the pages folder, and then we made some updates to the index.js, right? So we are going to keep editing this some more, and then we are also going to create some new pages. Okay, so that's what we want to do in this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change this to hello, right? Hello, welcome to Saki Sports, because we want to customize this and use that for our sports website. Okay, and then that's it. So let's save this and then get rid of all these imports because we are not using them at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and then this rebuilds. Okay, and then we can see the updates here. Okay, all right, great. So this section, what we're going to do is we're going to create pages and add content to our site. Okay, and in Gatsby, creating pages is very simple. So you go to the pages directory and then you create a new page. So we're going to call this page news, and we can call it news, okay, .js, and this is going to be our news page. So a page is basically a normal React component. So this could either be a class component or a function component. So I'm going to use a function component, and I'm going to use the JSS snippet. Okay, so if you don't know what that is, you can go to the extension store and then just search for JSX snippets. Okay, this, and then what this does is it helps you generate skeletons for some React, so class components, function components, and all of that stuff. So it saves you a lot of time. I like using that a lot, so I'm going to use that to generate a function component skeleton. Okay, so I'm going to type RFC, and then this means a React functional component, and this is going to generate the skeleton for me. All right, great. So this, I'll just make this an uppercase because it's a convention to keep your component names with uppercase, and then save. And then inside here, I'll just return an h1 that says hello. This is the news page. Okay, so we created a new page, and so this is what happens, right? When you create a component inside the pages directory, Gatsby is going to treat that component as a page. Okay, so we just created a news component here, and then Gatsby is going to treat this as a new page. Okay, so that's why all the pages that you're going to have in your application or in your site, you're going to put them inside this pages directory. So to test that this page works, we can go to projects in the browser and then move to /news. Okay, /news, and then hit enter, and then we should see hello, this is the news page. So Gatsby also automatically generates a link, a path. Okay, a path for that page. So when you create any component in the pages directory, Gatsby is going to use the name of the component to generate a path. Okay, that's how come we're able to go to /news and resort this page. Okay, so that's really cool. So let's create another page, create a new one, and then we're going to call this sports. So this is going to be our sports section, and then this sports page, once again, we're going to generate a function component. Okay, and then I'll name this sports with a capital S, and then sports, export that as well. And inside here, I'm going to return an h1 that says hi, this is the sports page. Okay, so let's save that again, and then this rebuilds here, and then we can go to /sports. Okay, so /sports, because we use sports as the name of the component in the page. Okay, the pages directory, and then we see hi, this is the sports page. Right, so creating pages in Gatsby, it's really easy and it's super cool. All right, so now let's get rid of the pages that we don't need. All right, so this pages 2 was from the Gatsby template, so we'll delete that, and then we'll keep the 404 page. I'll explain what that is for later. So and then we can also get rid of the TypeScript component. All right, the TypeScript file. So now we should have 404 index, news, and sports pages. All right, and all those pages should work. So if I go back to my index page, which is this, that should also work as well. All right, so yeah, that's awesome. All right, so now that we have our pages, we know what our pages are, let's start adding some row content to our pages. Okay, so this is the approach we are going to use. Usually when you have pages, you don't want to code the actual content of the pages in in the pages component itself. Okay, so for instance, I have a sports page, but I don't want to code all the content of the sports page in here. Okay, that's not really a very good way to go about this. So instead, what we're going to do is we are going to create components. Okay, and these components are going to contain the content, and then we can assemble the components in the pages. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So for instance, in the index page, we're going to create components, several components that hold the content, and then we can assemble those components here. Okay, so let's get started with that. So I'm going to go to the components folder here, and in this components folder, that's where we're going to create all the components. Okay, and then I'm going to delete all the files here. Okay, so I'll just delete the header. Okay, I'll delete the header. I'll delete the image. I'll delete the layout.css. I'll basically delete everything in here. Okay, I'll delete this. Then maybe I can leave the SEO. Okay, so that might be useful later. So now what we're going to do is I like to make my components as independent as possible, and what this allows me to do is to reuse these components or the components that I create in other projects. Okay, so what I do is for each component I create a folder for that component. So we're going to have a folder for the header component. Okay, and then inside this header component I'm going to have the file for the header component itself. Okay, so I'm going to call this header. Okay, so I'm going to use the uppercase, call this header.jsx. So you can also use this extension. Okay, so it's allowed to use the .jsx extension because mostly you'll be writing JSX here. And I like to use this convention because what this allows me to do is to use the emmet shortcut. So for instance, I can do div.container. Alright, and then this is going to create a div with container for me. So that's why I like to use this shortcut. I want to rename the folder to a lowercase. Alright, so header. Okay, and then the component itself will have an uppercase. So the reason why I like to do this is so that everything related to this header component would be inside this folder. So it's CSS, if there are any images related to this, like whatever is related to the header component will be co-located inside this header folder. All right, so I like to do that. Okay, so let's create the component. I'm going to use a functional component again. So I do RFC and I hit enter, and then this generates a skeleton for me, and then I can start putting in the actual content. Okay, so I'll have a header component, and then inside this I'm just going to give this a class name. Okay, so this standard React class name, and then I'll call this header. So this will allow us to easily style the component. And then here I'm going to create another div. Okay, and then I'll just have Zaki sports.com. Okay, and this is just a fancy name. you can call it whatever you want. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. And then inside I'm going to create another div, and then inside this div maybe I'll create a URL. Okay, and then maybe inside the URL I'll create some LIs. Okay, so and then maybe, yeah, so the idea is just to create a header more like a nav bar, and then this would be more like the logo and then the links. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. So inside here maybe we'll have a link that goes to home. Okay, so we'll do slash, and then this should go to home. So home, and then I'm going to duplicate these several times. So I'll just highlight all these, and I'm going to use Shift Alt and then the down arrow key to duplicate this. Okay, so I'll call this latest news, okay, and we want this link to go to the news page. Okay, so this goes to the home page, and the home route is slash, okay, and then we want this to go to the news page, so we're going to use the news page. And if you remember, when we created the page, we said that Gatsby is going to use the name of the page to serve as the route, okay, the path. So this is going to be slash news, and then we'll have another one, and then we're going to call this sports, okay, so maybe sports. So this will be sports, then this will be slash sports, okay, for our sports page as well. So this is just a standard header that we create. Now we've created this header, okay, and we are exporting it here. So we need to somehow use this header. So what I'm going to do is, inside the index page here, I'm going to import the header and then use it here. Okay, so right after this, I'm going to import header, okay, because that's what we called it, and this is going to come from the current path. I need to go outside this file, and then I need to find components. Alright, so that's components, and then inside components I need to go inside the header folder, and then I can see header. Okay, so now that we have this, we can display the header in here. Okay, so I'm just going to display this in here, and this is all standard React stuff. Okay, so I'm displaying this here. Now I'll change this to a fragment so that I don't have too many divs in there. So I just change this to a fragment, and then we have our header component here, right? So let me just save this. Oh, so app crashed, and I think the reason is because we deleted some of the files. So let's check that. Let's try and find what's breaking our code. So we are trying to, some header.js is gone, and so we need to figure out anywhere in our project that we are using the files that we deleted. So in the index, we are not using any of that stuff here. 404, I think we might be using, we deleted the layout. I think we are using the layout, and the layout, right? So the layout, so I'll get rid of that. I'll just change this to a fragment. Okay, so now oh, it's broken again. So where is this coming from? Layout.js, no search file in the directory. Sorry guys, this happens. Okay, so there's something that happens, and we need to figure it out. All right, so let's just restart the server. So I just create a server, and then let's restart the server. So I'm going to run Gatsby develop again, and then hopefully that should sort out the issue. So sometimes this happens when you delete some of the files. So you just need to create a server and then restart the server again. Okay, hopefully this should fix the issue. So it looks like the error is gone, right? So so in the index page, right, here we just imported the header, and then we are displaying the header. Okay, so let's save that again, and then let's go to the browser, and then let's just restart this. So there's the error from before, so let's restart this, and then now we can see our header being displayed in the home page. All right, there's not a very pretty header, I admit, but we can still see our header showing here, right? Okay, so that's pretty good, I guess. Let's quickly create our footer component as well. So what I'm going to do is inside the components folder, I'll create another folder here. Then I'm going to call this footer. Okay, and then anything related to the footer will put inside this folder. So I'll create a new footer component, footer.jsx, okay, and then I'm going to generate a function component, okay, and then inside here I'll just give this a class name of footer for styling purposes, and then inside here we'll just have a paragraph that says maybe a copyright symbol, and then we'll say Zaki Sports 2021, okay, that's 2010, 2021, and then maybe all rights reserved, just the normal stuff, okay, all right, reserved. All right, and then we can save this, and inside our index page we're going to import the footer component as well, right? So we'll go here and then we'll import footer from components slash footer, and then the footer components, okay, and then maybe right after all the content we just put our footer component. That's going to be the last thing we want to display in our index page, okay, and then we'll save this. So let's save this. This rebuilds again, and then we go to our page, and then we see our footer here being displayed. All right, so later we're going to style this to make it look more presentable, but now we're just dealing with the content, okay. So hopefully you're able to get this done as well. Okay, so now we have some content on our page, okay, but if we want to see the other pages, we can do one of two things. So either we manually go to the URL and then type /news to see the news page, and you can see this takes a while, or another thing we can do is use this header that we built. All right, so here too I can hit latest news, but see how long this takes, and we also see a full page reload, okay. So when I click on sports, we see a full page reload here. All right, and this is not really it's not really fast, and it's not super cool, okay. One of the advantages of using tools like Gatsby and React is to take advantage of the client side rendering, okay. So what we want to do is now use a different component that allows us to see different pages without having to do a full page reload, okay. So fortunately for us, Gatsby can easily allow us to do that. So in the header component, what we are going to do is we are going to import a component from Gatsby, and this component is called the link component, okay, and this we import from Gatsby. So if you are familiar with React, you might have used the React router DOM package, okay, or React router, where you would have to manually configure your routing, and then set up your routes, and then you do all those things manually, right, to be able to enjoy the benefits of client-side rendering. Now with Gatsby, all those route configurations have been done for you behind the scenes. All you need to do is import this link component and then use them for your navigation, right? And that's what we're going to do. So here we'll change all the A tags or the anchor tags to link, okay. Just change all to link. We'll change this one to link as well, and then we'll change this one to link as well, and then change this one to link, and this one to link. All right, so yeah, awesome. So we're basically using the link component from Gatsby. We don't need to install any other third-party routing packages. All this is built into Gatsby, and then we can benefit from client-side rendering by just using the link component. All right, so in the previous video when I said that that was all we needed to do, I kind of lied, right? And let me explain to you why. So although we are using the link component in here, when we go to our page and try to go to another page, right? So currently we are on the home page. Let's try and see the news page. So when I click on the news page, you see we still have this full page reload again, and you might be wondering, well, you said that if we use the link component, this is going to be fine, right? You don't have to see this full page refresh. All right, so here is the thing, and I see most people do this, and I actually fall victim to this sometimes. So this is what you need to note, right? With the link component, you don't pass in an href. Instead, you use the to prop. Okay, so the link component goes with the to prop and not the href. Okay, so there's something that you would have to be mindful of. So we have to change all the href to 2. Okay, so I'll change this to 2. That sounds a bit weird. 2. Okay, so to 2, and then this href to 2 as well, right? And then we save this. So now link to, and then the path, and then link to and the path, and all of that. Make sure we have that done properly. And then let's go back to our page, and now on the home page, we are still on the home page, right? Let's try visiting the news page. So I hit on latest news, and you see this takes us to the news page, and you don't see the full page refresh again. You don't see the full page reload, and this was seemingly faster than what we had before. So let's try this again. This time let's go to the sports page. I click on the sports page, and it brings us to the sports page, and we don't see the full page reload, right? So this is client-side rendering benefits here. Alright, so what happens if we try to visit a page that does not exist? So for instance, let's say we add another link. Okay, so in our header we add another link, and then we say this link should go to, let's just call this contact. Okay, and then we say this link should go to /contact. Okay, so for instance, we say we create a link, and then we say this link should go to /contact. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen? So I just saved this, and then let's go back to the browser and see. So we go back to our home page, and then we now see our newly created contact link. Okay, so let's try. So when I click on this, we see it brings us to this page, right? Which is the 404 page. So here we see that that's not a page yet at /contact. And then it says create a React component in your site directory at pages, okay, /contact, and then this page will be automatically refreshed to show the page component you created. So what Gatsby is saying, what this is saying is that anytime you create a link or you try to visit a path, okay, that does not yet have a component with that name in the pages directory, we are going to see this 404 page. It means that page does not yet exist. Okay, so you are going to see this 404 page, and this is the development version. So if we're going to push your project to a live server, you might as well also design your own 404 page. Okay, so that's something that you can also do. So what this means is that whenever anyone using your site tries to visit a page that does not exist, is going to see that page. So always make sure that if you are going to create a link that should go to a particular page, make sure you create a component for that page in the pages directory. Okay, so for instance with this, it means that what we'd have to do is go to the pages directory and then create a component with the name contact. Okay, and then the name of the components must match the path that you want to have as your link, okay, as your new page. All right, so I just wanted you guys to see this. So maybe now we can just get rid of this link, or you can just leave it if you like. All right, so now we can go back to our home page, right? So these are the pages that we have. We can just hit this, and that takes us to our home page. All right, so let's say when we go to our latest news page, we realize that here we don't have the navbar and the footer. Okay, and the same applies to the sports page. We don't have the navbar and the footer here, and the reason is that in those components or in those pages we didn't import the navbar and the footer components, and we are not using them there. All right, so to be able to show the navbar and the footer, the navbar or the header and the footer in those other pages, we have to go to those pages. We have to go to those pages. That's the news page, the sports page, and then we'll have to import the navbar and the footer and then display them here. But what if later on we want to add maybe a sidebar, and then we want to add some other stuff that should also be displayed on all the other pages that we create. Okay, and then what if we have 20 other pages? What that means is that we'd have to go to those pages and manually import those individual other components that are supposed to be displayed on all those pages and then render them. So this is not really ideal, right? So in this kind of circumstance, what you want is to create a layout. Okay, so a layout component is some sort of component where you put in the things that would be displayed in multiple pages, so that in those pages you just use the layout once, and then all those multiple things will be displayed, right? So let me just show you what I mean. So what we're going to do is in the components folder, we are going to create a layout component. So I'm just going to create a new file, and then I'm going to call this layout. Okay, so I can use the lowercase or uppercase. Let me just use uppercase, and I'll call this layout.js. Okay, or you can use layout.jsx. That also works. So let me just use .jsx. Okay, so this is a layout component, and then in here it's basically going to be a function component as well, because it's just a React component. So I'll just create a function component here, and then there's going to be a layout component. Okay, so inside the layout component, what we want to do is we want to import all the other components that would be displayed in the multiple pages or all the other pages. So in our case, that is going to be the header component and the footer component, because we want all the pages that we create later in the future and the ones that we have to display the header and the footer. Okay, and we don't want to be manually importing those components in the respective pages. So I'm going to import footer, or maybe we can start with header from header. So we'll go to the header, and then we'll import header, right? And then we'll do the same for the footer. So I'm just going to import the footer as well. So footer, and then so we'll go to footer, and then we'll get the footer as well. Okay, right. So now that we have these, what we're going to do is I'll convert this to a fragment. Okay, this standard React stuff, right? You can either use a fragment like this or react.fragment, and or you can just use the shorthand syntax. That's what I'm using. And then in here, we want to say that we want to display for each page that uses this layout component. We want to display the header, and then we also want to display the footer. Okay, and then in between the header and footer, this is where we want to display the actual content of that particular page. Okay, so any other page that we use this layout in, that page is going to show the header and then the footer, and then the actual content of the page will be displayed in the middle here, right? So to get to the actual content of the page here, what we're going to do is we're going to destructure that here and call this children. So this is going to be children props. Okay, so this children props, which is whatever content that the page itself has, and this children here will be passed here. So once again, this standard React stuff. Okay, so now this layout component is ready, and we can use it in our components. So I'm just going to save this. Okay, and then let's first use it in our index page. So I'll go to our index page, and then instead of manually importing the header and footer like we did before, I'm going to get rid of the header and then the footer altogether, right? So I'll get rid of this, and I don't need to import this in here anymore. Instead, what we are going to do is we want to import the layout component. Okay, so import the layout component from, and this would have to go to go out and then go to our components, and then in here we can find layout. Okay, so our layout component, and this is how we want to use it. So instead of wrapping this in a frag or a fragment, we actually want to wrap the content of this page in the layout component. Okay, so this becomes like a tag. Okay, so opening layout and closing layout. So this is how to use the layout component. So a layout and then the content itself. So this content here is what we are passing in to the layout component as children. That's why they will be displayed in here, right? Okay, so where are we? Back to the index page. Let's save this and then make sure that this still works, right? So we'll go to the browser and then is it done compiling? I think so. And then we'll just reload the page and we see that this still works. We still see our header and then we see our footer. Now let's do the same for the other pages, right? So let me just get rid of these guys, and then maybe in the news page, I'll import the layout. All right, from this should be from. Sorry, why do I keep doing this? So components and then layout. Okay, and then here I'll convert the div to the layout. Sorry, layout, and then this to layout. So just by doing this, okay, just by doing this, and then we'll do the same for sports. Okay, so let's do the same for sports. So I'll just convert this to layout. Hopefully this should auto import it for me. So yeah, auto import, there you go. And then layout. Okay, so format this well and then save. So now we are expecting that when we go to the latest news or the news page and the sports news, they should both have the header and then the footer. Okay, this footer. So let's try that. So latest news, and we see we are on the news page, and then we have the header and the footer, and then from here we go to the sports page and then we have the header and the footer, right? So this is really cool and it comes in really handy. Alright, so in this section I want us to focus on styling. Okay, so styling our pages and maybe add some more content. Okay, so basically I want us to look at all the different ways or approaches that we can style a Gatsby application. Okay, so if you don't care so much about styling, or if you don't care about styling at all, you can skip this session altogether. Let's start with CSS models. Okay, so we are going to style our header component, and we are going to use CSS models. So CSS models is a way of writing CSS which helps us write CSS that is locally scoped to the component. Okay, so it's component scoped CSS. And what this means is that whatever CSS that you write is going to only affect that particular component that you use that CSS. Okay, so using CSS model, allows us to write normal CSS or write CSS normally, but with some sort of safety. Okay, so that other components don't interfere with that styling. Okay, styling from other components don't interfere with this one, so you don't have to worry about selector collisions and all of that. So this is something that I recommend if you are new to React JS or Gatsby for that matter. Using CSS models is a very safe way to write your CSS. Okay, so let's just create a CSS model and see how it works. So in the header component, let's start with our header component. Okay, let's start styling the header component. So in the header component, I'm going to create a new file. Okay, and I'm going to call this is going to be a CSS model. So the convention for creating this file is the name of the component, so header and then .module. Okay, not modules, module.css. okay, so this is how you create a CSS model. Header.module.css. So the name of the component and then module and then .css. So Gatsby is pre-configured to work out of the box with CSS model, so you don't have to do any other configurations. And so once we create our file, all we need to do is just write normal CSS. So maybe we can target the header class. Maybe we can have a header class, and then to start with, you can set a background color to, I don't know, tomato, or maybe this color, RGB. All right, or you can just set tomato. This 238 maybe, and then 49. So 65, right? So this color should look close to reddish tomato, right? Something like that, like red. So yeah, great. So let's save this. So this is basically, how a CSS model is created. So we've created our CSS model. Now let's use it. So we want to go to the header component. Let me just clear this stuff so that we have a clean. And then clear. Great. So we go to the header component here, and then we can now use our CSS model. So to use the model, the CSS model, we need to first import it. Okay, so we need to import it, and this is how you import it. So you import header styles. Okay, so we're going to call this header styles. Okay, and then we import that from the current directory. We are looking for header.model. Okay, model.css. Alright, let me just, sorry about that. So header.model.css. So we are importing our CSS model, and we are calling it header. So we are kind of saving it in a variable called header. Okay, so we are importing this file and saving it here called header. Now that we have this, we can use this header styles to style our components. All right, so the first thing I want to do is here, instead of using the header class, we want to use the CSS model. Okay, so to use this, I set this here, and then now I can fetch classes, okay, or whatever styles from here by just calling the header styles. So I can do header styles dot header, and that's going to call this class. Okay, so in here I can do header styles. Okay, and header styles refer to this file. So go to this file and fetch me the header class. Okay, so go to this file and then fetch me the header class, and that's going to style this div right here. So let me just save this and make sure I save this as well, and then hopefully if we go to our page, we should see a background color on our header. Okay, so let's go to maybe the home page, and then let's reload the page, and fortunately we don't see the header. So what's up? What's wrong? Let me just restart our dev server. So I'm just going to shut down the server by doing Ctrl+C, and then just restart this. Right, so Gatsby develop. Alright, so we restarted our server, and let me go to the page and then just reload the page. Okay, yeah, so now we see our styles is taking effect. So I don't know, sometimes this happens often, especially I think I have a lot of things running on my PC, and sometimes it makes things slower, right? So whenever you run into some of these issues, you make some updates and you are not seeing the updates, you can just quickly restart your server, and that should fix things up. Yeah, so we created a header model, a CSS model, and then we use it to style this header. Let's go ahead and quickly finish styling our header component. So what I'm going to do is just going to style the links too, right? So in here I'm going to create another class called this header links. Okay, and then target the URL or the unordered list, and then maybe I'll set the width to 30 view width. Okay, so I'm using the view width, so this should be 30 view width. Okay, and then I'll set we didn't finish styling our header itself, sorry, so we need to finish this guy up. Maybe let's set the display. So what I want to do is currently the items are vertical, are displayed vertically. I want to set them horizontally. Okay, so in here, let me just bring this over to the right. All right, I'm used to that. So in here, I'll set the display to flex. Okay, and then justify content to space between. So I want to not space around, space between. So what I want to do is, after I set them horizontally, I want to move these links over to the right. Okay, and then have this on the left. So I set this, and then let's save this. What's up? Okay, so this view with 30. Let me just clear this for now. Okay, and then save this. Yeah. Okay, so back here, and you can see that now our list items are over to the right, and then we have this to the left. Right, so that's good for the start. So now let's target the links itself. Let's start these guys. So in here, I'll set the width again to, yeah, I think 30 is good enough. View width. Okay, and then I'll set the display to flex as well, because I want to display this list horizontally as well. So I'll set display to flex, and then justify content to space around this time. Okay, space around, and then let's save that. And then in the header component itself, I want to use that to style this links. Okay, so I'm going to set the styles on this div. So I'm going to give that a class name, and then set that to header styles. Okay, so remember header styles, and then this time we want to use the header links. All right, this header links class. All right, okay, here. So set that here, and then save. Okay, so let's save that and see how that so you see that kind of flex our items, and it looks, it's beginning to take shape. Okay, all right, so great. So the next thing we want to do is let's take out this list items. So back here, I'm just going to call header links. Is the spelling all right? So header links, and then I'll target the UL, and then this time I'll target the LI, and then in here I'll just set list style to none. Okay, so I just set list style to none, and then maybe I should also whilst I'm here, let me just set the target the links itself, so the anchor tags itself, and then first let's set the text decoration. So I don't want any underlined stuff, right? So I set the text decoration to none as well, and then let's set the color to white. Okay, so the text color to white. Okay, so this should look good because we're already using this header links here, okay, and everything else is inside the header links. It's still going to work as expected. So yeah, and then we see the changes. Now one thing about I forgot to mention this about using CSS modules is behind the scenes it creates this unique classes for you. So if you go to elements, okay, and then you see it creates this unique classes for us. Okay, it's not using, it creates these unique classes for us, and then it applies the styles on those unique classes. So this header that we did, you see it creates a header dash model dash this, and so this ensures that we don't have any CSS selector collisions because these classes are unique. And so that's one really cool thing about using CSS modules. Okay, all right, so now maybe if someone hovers on this, you want to apply some styles. Okay, so let's do, maybe I'll just copy this over. Okay, and then I just want to change the hover, right? So when someone hovers on this, okay, I want to set the color to yellow, so just set the color to yellow. Okay, great. So let's save this, and then now if I hover on this, you see it's yellow, so that's also cool. What else? Maybe also would want to style this guy a bit. It doesn't really look super nice here, so what I'm going to do is inside the header component, right here, maybe I'll wrap this in a div. Okay, so I'll give this a class of, so a class name of, we are going to use header styles. Okay, so header styles.logo. I haven't yet created this logo class, but I'm going to create that very soon. And then what I also do is I'll wrap this text in a span, okay, so that we can actually, not the whole text, maybe just the .com, so that we can style this .com, right? So I'll wrap this text in a span tag like this. All right. Okay, great. So now let's create this logo class. I just formatted this code so it looks a lot neater. So let's start this logo class. Okay, so I'll save this, and then inside here, maybe right after this, I'll just create a logo class, and then I'll maybe increase the font size of the text so it's larger. Let's try 2 rem, and then let's try a margin on all sides to 0.5, 0.5, right? Yeah, so let's save that, and then let's see. So this it looks quite bigger now. All right, and then maybe let's change the text, just a .com to another color, right? So that's why we wrap a span around it, so we can target the span by doing logo. So first using the logo class, because the span is in the logo, and then we target this, and then we can set color, so we can set color to yellow. Okay, so let's try yellow again, and then let's save this, and then yeah, so this looks pretty cool, right? So I know this is probably not the best navbar you've seen around, but it's decent. Alright, so we are also going to look at another approach of styling a Gatsby application, and this time we are going to use CSS in JS. Okay, so there are a couple of CSS in JS libraries out there, like emotion and styled components. Okay, so in our case, we are going to use styled components. This also allows you to write CSS in your JavaScript file, and it also scopes your CSS to the particular component. Okay, so you don't have to worry about selector name collisions and all of those stuff. So yeah, let's get started setting up styled components. Now, one thing is Gatsby makes it really painless to use styled components in your application, because Gatsby comes with some plugins that allows you to easily integrate styled components into your Gatsby application. So to get started, we need to install a couple of things. The first thing we want to install is the styled components library, and then we will also install the styled components plugin for Gatsby, and then we will also install the Babel plugin for styled components. So let's install these things in our application now. So I'm going to create the dev server by using Ctrl+C. Okay, and then I'm going to, let me just clear my terminal. Then I'm going to install these couple of things. So the first thing I want to install is I'm going to use yarn, so I'll do yarn add, okay, and then styled components. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to install, and I want to install all these 3 packages at a go. So I'll add a space, okay, and then I'll add a Gatsby plugin styled components. Okay, so there's a Gatsby plugin for styled components, and then I also need to add the Babel plugin for styled components. So Babel plugin, and then styled components. Okay, yes, so we are installing these three packages: styled components, the Gatsby plugin for styled components, which is Gatsby plugin styled components, and then Babel plugin. So I just saw a typo here. This is supposed to be plugin. Okay, so Babel plugin styled components. Okay, and then we just hit enter. So this should install these three packages in our application, and with these packages we can start using styled components in our site. So this looks like this is going to take a while, so I'll pause the video and come back when this is done. Alright, great. So we've installed this application, we've installed these packages, and we can confirm by going to the package.json, and then we can see Gatsby plugin styled components. We can also see styled components here, and then we can see where's the Babel plugin styled components. So we've been able to install these three packages, right? The next thing we want to do is go to the Gatsby config. Okay, so the Gatsby config here, remember we spoke a little about this file, and then as part of the plugin section we want to add a new plugin that we installed. Okay, so in the plugin section we want to add this new plugin that we installed. So here I'm just going to add, after this plugin I'll just add, or you can just add it anywhere in the plugin section. Okay, so I'll just add it here, and then I'll add Gatsby. So Gatsby plugin styled components. Okay, so components, and we need to put this in a string, so I'll put that in a template string. That's the key next to the one on your keyboard. So shift and then let me undo this, and then yes, so I just put that in a template string, and then I'll add a comma here. Right, so we just added that plugin, the Gatsby plugin styled components, to our list of plugins, so that Gatsby will be aware that we're going to need this plugin. Okay, so yeah, that's just about it. You install the three dependencies, and then you add the plugin here, and you are set to go. And let's save this and then start our dev server again. Okay, so I'm going to start the dev server by running Gatsby develop. Okay, yeah, and then we can close this file as well. So in our we're going to style our footer components by using the styled components, right? So let me get rid of these guys, and now inside our footer components we are going to style our footer. Okay, all right, great. So what we're going to do is, first we need to import styled components, right? We need to import styled, okay, from styled components. All right, that's the first thing we need to do. So we import styled from styled components, and then we can use this styled to create some styles. Okay, so once again this allows us to write normal CSS syntax in our JavaScript file. Okay, so in here what I'm going to do is I'll create a variable called styled footer. Okay, so just styled footer, and I'll set this to styled .div. Okay, we are going to use this to style this div here. Okay, and then this here I'll use the backtick, okay, which is on the left of your one key. So the one key on your left to the one key, that's where you have the backtick. So this style here, this is where I'm going to write my CSS. Okay, so right here I'm going to write all the CSS. So the first thing I want to do is set a background color to maybe black. Okay, and then maybe set color to white. Okay, and then maybe also add some padding, 0.5 rem. I think that's good enough, and then maybe a margin top of 2. All right, so 2 rem as well, 2 rem. All right, so now we've written the css for, oh, I missed the 2. We've written the css for the footer. So to use these styles here, what we have to do is inside on this footer class, we need to change this to styled, right? So we need to change this div to use this variable here, which contains a style. So we say styled footer, okay, and then styled footer. All right, so we are replacing the div with this styled footer here, okay, and that means that all the styles that are here are going to apply to this, and this scopes the styles to this particular component. Okay, so let's save that and see if it works. Okay, so let's save that here. This rebuilds our page, and then let's reload this. So what's up? So let's save this again, and then see, reload this, and yeah, now we see our styles, right? So we are styling our footer using styled components now. Okay, so let's maybe move this text to the middle. All right, so we can also create another styles for the paragraph. All right, so to do that, we'll create another variable, and we can call this styled paragraph. So styled paragraph. Okay, so this is just a variable. You can call it whatever you want. So styled paragraph is going to be equal to styled. Okay, so we are using this styled that we imported from styled components, and this time we want to target the paragraph, so p, and then we use the backtick again. Okay, and then inside there we are going to write the styles that should apply to the paragraph. So for now we'll just set the text align to center. Okay, so that's the only thing that we want to do now. So we set the text align to center, and then in here we are going to replace this p with this variable here, style. Okay, so I'll just put so style. Let me just type it out. I wanted to paragraph. Okay, and then the closing tag for that as well will be styled paragraph. All right, so let me just format the code so it looks cleaner, and then I save this. Okay, and this rebuilds again, and then we see that our text has moved to the middle. Right, so yeah, this is not the most elegant styling there, but this is just to give you the idea. You can do whatever you want. You can improve the styling, obviously, and yeah, this is how to start with styled components. So one cool thing about using styled components is you can conditionally render styles. So let me show you how this works. So let's say we want to set the color of the text in the footer to yellow, okay, or any other color that will be passed in as a prop. So we can conditionally render the color that will be passed in as a prop to the component, or set a default. So let me just show you how this works. So in our color property, we are going to do this and then pass in props. Okay, so we get access to the props, and then we can fetch the color from the props. So we say props.color. That's if a color is passed in as a prop. Otherwise, we want to set the default to we want to set the default to white. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. And so let's set this to white as a default color. Okay, so now we are saying that a color will be passed into this styled footer, and then when that color is passed in as a prop, we are going to display that color. Otherwise, use white as a default color. So when we save this, as at now, we are not passing in any color as a prop, right? So the color of the footer, so the color of the text in the footer is supposed to be white, which it is right now, right? So what happens if we pass in a color as a prop? So let's say we pass in a color here, a color, and then we are going to pass in yellow as a color. Okay, so and we are expecting that if we go to the page, we're going to see yellow, and you can see that this works. So that's one cool thing about using styled components. You can optionally display styles by passing in props. You can also set global styles using style components. So for instance, here we can see that we have some margins on the sides of our site, and we want to take out those margins, right? But we want that to affect all the other pages that use our layout component. So what we can do is we can go to the layout component, which is here, and then inside this layout component we can use global styles from styled component. Okay, so we would first have to import, so I'm going to import global, create global styles. Okay, and this is create global style, not styles, and this will be from the styled components package. Okay, so with this global styles here, we can create some styles that should apply to all the pages that use our layout. So we create a variable and call this global style. Okay, so global style, and this will be equal to create global style. Okay, so we are using this module that we imported, and then we are going to use the backticks again, and then we're going to pass the styles here. Okay, so here is where we write the CSS. So for now, what I want to do is just set the body to set the margin on the body to 0 pixels, right, on all sides. Yeah, and then I'll save this, and then we will check here, and then hopefully if I reload this, we should see the styles being applied. So this is not applying, and the reason is we are not using this global style, right, in our layout yet. So that's one thing that you'd have to do. So inside your layout, right before the header, we need to render global styles. Okay, so I'm just going to render global style, okay, and which is this variable that we created, and then I'll render that here. Okay, so once I render this global style, now when I reload the page, we should see, now we see that the spaces are gone, which means our styles, our global styles, is taking effect. Alright, so we are going to take a quick break from styling and create some additional components. So in our components folder, we are going to create a new folder here, and we're going to call this hero. Okay, so this is where we are going to create our hero component. So inside this hero folder, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this hero.jsx, and in here we are going to create our hero component, right? So I'm just going to use a function component here, that should create the skeleton for us, and then we can start adding some content to this component. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just give this a class name of hero for styling purposes. So class name of hero, and then I'll create 2 divs. Alright, so in here I'm going to create a div with class name. So a div with class name, we'll call this video section. So I'll have a section for video, and then I'll have a section for text. Okay, so I'm just going to have this, and then I'll have another one for text. So I'll have this text section here, like that, and then inside, so let's start with the text. Okay, so because that's like pretty easy, so in here I'm just going to add an h5, and then we can say maybe football, right? So this is a sports website, so we can say football, and then maybe throw in a BR tag, and then we can add maybe an h3, a large text that says why I think project Mbappe is such a great idea. Alright, so I know this sounds a bit funny, but I like it, so let's just use it, right? But you can as well write anything you like. So in here I'm just going to generate some lorem ipsum text. Okay, so I'll format this properly, and then we have something like this, right? So this should do for the text section, I think. And then in the video section. So I'm just going to grab a video from YouTube, okay, and then I'll just paste that here. Okay, so let me save this, and then so there's this video about Project Mbappe. I'll just grab it and then use it. So I'll go to the share section and then embed, okay, and then I'll grab this iframe here. Okay, so that's what I want. So I'll just grab this iframe, and then I just copy that and then move it here. So in here I'm going to paste the iframe. Okay, so I'll format this code. It should look something like this. All right, yeah, so let's save this and see how this looks. So before then, now we've created a component, but we are not actually rendering that anywhere. So I'm going to render that. Let me just close this, guys. So I'll go to the index page here, and then I'll render the component here. So let's get rid of this dummy text that we had before. So I'm just going to get rid of this, and instead I'm going to import the component that we just created. Okay, so I'll import hero, okay, from, and this should be in our component folder, and then we should see the hero folder, and then in here we'll find the hero component, and then we can display or render this here. So I'll render hero, and then I'm going to save this, and then let's go back to our browser. All right, so in here, yeah, we should see something like this, right? So now that we have this component, we can later focus on styling this component. All right, so let's create another component which is going to show how a single category, a single sports category is going to look like, right? So we're just going to have components for displaying a category. So let's just go ahead and do that. So in the components folder, I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call this categories. Okay, so categories, and then inside of this folder I'm going to create another file, and then I'll call this file category. Okay, so just for a single category, so I'll call this category, and let me use an uppercase category.jsx. I hope I got the spelling right. And then this is just going to be a function component, which is just going to return some JSX, right? So in here I'll have a div, and then I'll give it a class name of category, right, for styling purposes. So I'll give this category, and then in here I'm going to create two divs, right? So I'll have a div to display a photo, so a div with class photo, and then I'll have another div to display some text, right? So I'll just call this text. All right, and yeah, so something like this. And then so this is what we want to do, right? In here we want to have an image tag that's going to render an image, and then we want to get that image from the props. Okay, so we want to get that image from the props, and then in here too we want to have a heading, so maybe an h4 heading, which is also going to display some heading text, and then we'll also have a paragraph which will display some paragraph text, right? So paragraph. Okay, but these things are going to be dynamically injected, right? So because the content for each category is going to be different. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in some props for each of these individual contents, and then we can render that from the props, right? So I'm just going to destructure those props here, which means any component that renders this category component is going to have to pass in those props. Okay, so the first one would be the photo URL. Okay, so the URL for displaying the image, and then we'll also have the heading prop for displaying the heading, and then we'll have a description too, right? So now that we have these props being passed in here in the src property, we can now pass in the photo URL, right, which will be accessed from the props. And then maybe for the alt text we can use the heading. Okay, so we can use the heading, and then this here will replace this with the heading, which we are extracting from the props already, so the heading. And then the same for the paragraph is going to be description, right? I hope this makes sense. So this is standard React stuff. So now that we have this, this basically sets up our category component, right? So we're going to, in the next video, we're going to create another component called categories, and this component is going to render this single category component. Alright, so let's go ahead and create the page to display the categories, right? But before we do that, let me just close this stuff. So I'll close this and that, right? And you can see that in the categories folder, I have this file here called categoriesdata.js. So this file contains, all information about all the categories that we want to display on the page. So each category has, a name of a particular sport, the photo URL, and then a description. So you have football, an image of football, and then a description. And you have for athletics, Formula 1, cricket. So just some sports activities, right? So the idea is that in our categories page, we're actually going to grab this data and then render that data, right? So that's the idea. Ultimately, this information could come from an API or a CSV file or a CMS or whatever, but the idea is that you can grab some data from anywhere and then you'll be able to display that data in your Gatsby application, right? So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to attach this file to the resource section to the resources in this section or this video, right? So you don't have to create that. I actually got all this information from Wikipedia, by the way. So if you want to create your own file with your own information, you can do that, right? So in the categories folder, I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call this categories. Okay, so there is going to be plural, so categories .jsx, and then inside here I'll once again create a function component for our categories component. And then since we are going to use the categories data, this file, the information from this file, I'm actually going to import it, and so I'll go ahead and import that. So I'll import categories data, which is an array, and I'll grab that from it's in the same directory, so I can find that here. All right, okay, great. And also what I want to do is for each category I want to render it using the category template that we created earlier, right? So this component, so I would have to import that as well. So in here I'm going to import category. Okay, so category from which is also in the same directory, so I can just see that here and then put that in. All right, so in here we basically want to return a div, okay, and maybe that div should have a class of categories, right, for styling purposes. So we can just add categories like that, and then in here, okay, what we want to do is display all categories, right, kind of. Okay, not this text, right, but the idea is to render all the categories here using this category template, right? So what we're going to do is up here, right before we return the JSX, I'm going to create a constant or a variable and call this categories, and this categories variable is going to have the JSX of all the categories. All right, so we'll loop through, or we'll loop over the arrays, the data in here, and then for each one we are going to render the category templates. So we'll do categories data.map. I'm using the map operator, and then in here I can grab each category in the loop, and then I can also grab the index, and then for each of these, all I want to do is just return some JSX, right? So I basically want to return this category component, right? This category component that we created, for each of this category. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So we want to loop over the array, and then for each item in the array we are calling it category, and then for each of those items we want to use this category template to render it. So if I hover over this, you see that this category template is expecting some props, right? So photo URL, heading, and description. So we need to pass in those props. So the first thing you want to pass in is a key, because you want each item to be unique. All right, and that's the reason why we are getting the index here, so that we can pass the index as a key. So you can pass the index here as a key, and then after that we can pass in, so I'm breaking this down, So after that, we can pass in the additional props, right? So the first prop we want to pass in is photo URL, and this would be equal to category, because we are using category here to represent each data or each item in the array, and then we can say photo URL. Okay, and then we can do the same thing for, is it description? I think so, description. And then this is also going to be category dot description. Yeah. And then the last one, let me break this down. And then the last one is the heading, I think. So is it heading? Yeah, heading. And then we'll say category dot heading. All right. So yeah. So basically, now each iteration we are going to render this component with the respective data, and then after we are done, I want to render that here. So that variable is going to store all the categories, right? The templates for the categories, and we can finally render this categories variable in here, right? Yeah, so that's what we want to do. So now we have this categories component set up, which is also using this category component that we created earlier. So the final thing we want to do is render this component, right? So we'll go to the index page here, and then right after the hero section, we first want to import the categories component. So I'll import categories from, go to the component folder, and then we'll see categories, and then in here we want to import categories. Okay, so that's what we want to do. And then in here we can now render categories to the page. Okay, so let's do that, and then I'll save this, and then this rebuilds again. So we have some warnings. All right, we have some warnings. So what is it saying? Elements must have a unique title property, and that's coming from where is that coming from again? Hero.jsx. Okay, so hero.jsx. Oh, it's coming from the iframe. Alright, so let's check this out. So it says it must have a unique title property, which is the iframe. So let's just add in a title, and then we can say project Mbappe. Alright, project Mbappe. Okay, and let's save that. Heading is not defined. Oh, so category.js, which is here, is saying heading is not defined. Oh, there's a typo somewhere. I'm spelling something wrong. Oh, here. My bad. So this should be heading with an A. Okay, sorry about that. But it happens, right? So this rebuilds again, and then we go to our page, and then now we see a list of categories, right? So each one has a title, a description, and an image. Each one has a title, a description, and an image. Yeah, so formula 1, and then you have that. It seems like we are not rendering. It looks like it's only the the description that is being displayed. So let's check this out. So our category component is expecting a photo URL, heading, and description, right? So in our categories we are passing in photo URL, description, and heading, and then we also need to make sure that in this file we have name, right? So name, photo URL, description. So these things are not matching. So in here, categories, it has to be not heading, right? Name. Okay, sorry about that. Name, photo URL, and this. So quickly fix that, and then back here now we can see the name also appears, right? So the name, the image, and then the text, and for each one the name, the image, and the text, right? So yeah, now we've been able to add some additional components, and we can go ahead and apply some different styling techniques. Next up, let's look at how we can use SCSS or SAS in styling our Gatsby application. So Gatsby provides drop-in support for Sass or SCSS style sheets by providing a Gatsby plugin, right? So that makes things a lot easier for us. So what we want to do, the first thing we want to do to get started is to set up Sass in our Gatsby application, right? So we would have to install Sass and then also install the Gatsby plugin for Sass as well. So let's quickly do that. So in here, I'm going to run yarn add Sass. Okay, if you are using npm, you can do npm install Sass, and then you also have to install the Gatsby plugin for Sass, right? So that's Gatsby plugin Sass. Okay, yeah, so make sure you install these two dependencies, Sass and then Gatsby plugin Sass, and then you hit enter, right? So they should install those two packages in your application. Now once these packages are installed, you are set to use Sass. And so let me just, while this is working behind the scenes, I'll just close up all this stuff for now. Okay, and then so when this is done, remember, whenever you install a plugin, you would have to go to the Gatsby config.js and then configure that plugin, right? So once that is done, this is done installing, that's what we're going to do next. So this is going to take a while. My internet is a bit slow, so I'll just pause this and then come back when this is done. Alright, so this is done installing. I'm just going to clear the terminal and then run Gatsby develop to start our development server. And then what I'm going to do next is I'll go to the Gatsby config file, and then I'll go and configure this new plugin that we installed, right? So in the plugin section, I just want to add this plugin, right? So I'll add a backtick and then I'll add a comma, okay? And then in here I'll add Gatsby plugin Sass, right? So Gatsby plugin Sass. Okay, so once that is done, it means I'm ready to start using Sass. So I'll save this and we should be ready to start using Sass. Alright, so now that we have Sass set up, and we can start using Sass in our Gatsby application. Now if you don't know what Sass is, it's a CSS preprocessor that allows you to easily style pages, and it has these great helper methods and functions that can allow you to do a lot of stuff, right? So this is not a Sass course, so I'm not going to go into so much details. I'm just going to use the basic stuff. But if you don't know if you are not familiar with Sass at all, you can just go to the Sass documentation. So just go to the documentation here, and then you can check out the syntax and all the other stuff that Sass provides you, right? So I do recommend that you check this out if you've not used Sass in any project before. Now back to our application, what we're going to do is we are going to style our hero component using Sass, right? So inside our component, I'll find the hero folder here, and I'm going to create a new file. Okay, so in here I'm going to call this hero.scss, right? So that's the extension for Sass, and you can use SCSS or you can use your Sass, right? They are similar, but they use a different syntax. So I'll create an SCSS file, which is basically a Sass file, and this way we're going to write our styles. Now one great thing about Sass is you can create variables, and you can create your own helper functions, and you can actually kind of program in CSS, right? So it has these great superpowers, and that makes things a lot easier. So we'll just go ahead and use some of the basic stuff. So I'll create a new variable here, and I'm going to call this SM spacing, right? So this is a variable for our spacing, and then we'll just set one rem to this, and I'll create another variable for MD spacing. So whenever we want a medium size spacing, this is going to be 2 rem, and then we can create another one for large spacing, right? So we'll call this LG spacing, and this is going to be 4 rem, right? So you can set these variables to whatever you want. And then in our category, hero, right? You are styling the hero page. So let me move this over here. So our hero, we are going to target this hero class, right? So you can do that in Sass. Almost anything that you write in CSS is applicable in Sass, right? So you can just target the class hero, and then we can write some styles here, right? So the first thing we want to do to our heroes page is to set a height for the hero section. So maybe we can have a minimum height of let's try 350, right? So 350 pixels. And before we can know whether these styles are applying, we have to link this SAS file to our component, right? So up here, right after importing React, I'm going to import our SAS file. So it's in the same category, so we just do hero.scss, and that should import this SAS file for us, right? So now we have this imported, and because we have a hero class here, it should show that here we are having some errors. Alright, so what I'll do is sometimes this happens. What I'll do is I'll just shut down the server, okay, and then I'll start that again. So I'll shut down the server and then I'll restart the server. So run Gatsby develop again to restart the dev server, and this should restart the dev server, right? So yeah, we linked our SAS file here. We linked the SAS file here, and that should apply the styles to our page. Okay, so this server is running, and whilst it's doing that, maybe I can add on some additional styling as well. So if you realize we have an image here, a video here, and then some text. So what I want to do is move this text to the right of the image, and then maybe apply some other styles to the text and the content, right? So but I basically want to move this here. So what I want to do is set a display here to flex. Okay, I just set the display to flex, and it looks like our server has successfully restarted, so we can test it out. Let's see if the changes. So let's just refresh this page, and then we can see that the text has moved to the right side of the video, right? So our CSS here is applying to this component here, and that's what we want, right? So that's what we want. So we can continue adding some more styles. So I also want to set justify content to space between, right? Not space around, space between, so that we have some proportional space between the video and the text. So we can set that. So maybe I'll add some margin. Let me just add some margin, right? And then this margin, I want to use this variable, right? So margin top and bottom, I want to use MD, the variable we created, MD spacing. And then on the left and right, I want to use LG spacing. All right, so I'll save this, and then let's see if we have any changes. Yeah, so we can see the margins here, right? So that's what we want. It's looking better now. And then we can do same for padding. So let's set the padding, and we can use the padding. Let's use SM spacing, right? So having these variables allows you to reuse similar units in different places, and that's really cool. So we can set the padding to, and then we can see the padding is also taking effect. Okay, so yeah, that's like a good start. That's a good start. So maybe let's add some box shadow. So we can add some box shadow here, box shadow as well. And then I don't have any box shadow values in mind, so what I'm going to do is I'll go to Bootstrap, and then under the utilities section you see shadows, and then what I want is just have a shadow like this. So I'm just going to inspect this and grab the CSS property for that box shadow. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So for this, let's look for the shadow. There is it. So I'll just grab this shadow, the values here, and then I'll just go and use it. Right, so in our CSS, I'll just set that value to the box shadow, and then I'll save it. And then in here we see the shadow being applied, which is really cool. What else do we want to do? Maybe we have the text, H5, H3, and a paragraph. So maybe we want to do some stuff to these things as well. So in SAS, one cool thing is you can like add additional styles inside of a selector, right? And what that does is it scopes those selectors to this particular selector. So if I do h5, what this means is it's actually hero h5, right? So it makes writing CSS really simple. So I'll set the font size of this to 1.5 rem, and one thing you can do is also create variables for these as well if you like. And then I'll do similar thing, but this would be for the h3, and then this would be 2 rems, and then not 12, 2 rems, and then we can do the same for the paragraph, right? So the paragraph maybe 1.2, right? Let's try something like 1.2. okay, and yeah, let's save this and see if we have, yeah, and this looks all right. I think this looks all right, right? But we can definitely improve a few things. So I would also like to style the video, this video section and the text section too, so we can do that as well. So for the video section, I'll call the class video section class, and then I'll just set some padding, right? So I'll just say padding top and bottom should be 0, and then left and right should be SM spacing, okay, and that will do. And then I'll do similar for the text section. So text section should have a padding of 0 for the top and bottom, and then maybe a left and right MD spacing, right? And yeah, so I just formatted this, and let's save this and see. So I save this, go back to our CSS, and this looks it looks all right. I think it looks decent. I think the space here is too much, so what I would like to do is maybe I'll take off this BR tag, right? Take off this BR tag, and then I'll save this, and this should look way better. Okay, yeah, this looks way better, right? So this is just using SARS to style your application. There are a lot of things that you can benefit from using SARS, and you can just play around this, and let's see how this goes. Okay, so now let's style the category component, and with this we are going to use external CSS, right? So something that most of us must be familiar with, or maybe familiar with. So this categories component, and then just get rid of this category component. We're going to start this using external style sheet, right? So in this categories folder, we're going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this category.css. Okay, so this is a regular CSS file, and then we're going to use this to style this category component here, right? So first of all, we want to target this category and then apply some styles to it. So let's go ahead. So in here, I'll target the category class, okay, and then the first thing I want to do is set the width to, let's try 300 pixels, and then maybe the padding to 1.5 on all sides, so we can set 1.5 rem on all sides, and then we can also set some margin. So margin, we can do 1.5 on the top and bottom, and then 0 on the left and right. And then maybe some box shadow for this will also be nice. So I'll just go to the previous video, the SARS video, and then grab, the SARS file here, and then grab the value for the box shadow, and then I'll just use the same value here. So box shadow should be equal to that same shadow, right? So I'll save this, and to check whether this works, we'll have to link this file to the category component, right? So I'll just import from the same directory and category dot CSS. Okay, so let's save that and check out how each category looks like. So as of now, I'm not seeing any major changes, so I'll just reload the page. Yeah, and we see each category now looks better, right? So it looks nicer, it looks more decent, so we can, now maybe bring these guys next to each other, because we don't want them all displaying on a straight line like this, right? So let's go back to our styles and add on a few more things. So in here I would want to target the photo and apply some styles, and I'll do the same for the text, right? So category photo, so target the photo class, and then let's align it to the center, right? So I would want to align this to the center, and one hack that I use is just to set the text align to center, right? And this is going to bring it to the center, and then I'll set some padding as well, so 0.5 rem, and then 0 here. So top, this should be 0.5, top button should be 0.5, and then left and right should be 0. So I'll save this and let's check this out here. Yeah, then we can see those paddings here, and then we can also start the text. So we can do category and then text, and then the H4. We want to specifically target the H4, right? The paragraph, do we want to do anything to the paragraph? I don't think so. So we can set the font size of the H4 to maybe 1.3 rems as well, right? A little bigger. So let's save this, and then let's view this, and you can see that the font, the H4 is also quite bigger, right? So now our single category component looks quite decent, and we just did this with normal external CSS. Alright, so now let's improve how this looks. Maybe we want to bring these guys next to each other, and for that we are going to use inline CSS. Okay, so we're going to go to the categories component and apply some inline styles. Okay, so in here I'll get rid of this class because we're not going to use it. We want to use inline styling, and then just like you do in React, I'll just say the style prop, and then I'll pass in an object here, and then this object that I pass is going to contain our styles. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is set the display to flex. Okay, so there's an object that has key value pairs. Alright, so there's something that you should be familiar with in React. And then maybe we set the flex wrap. We want the items to wrap. We'll set this to wrap. Okay, so we want the items to wrap, and then we would also want to set justify the horizontal spacing. Is the horizontal spacing, so justify content, we want to set that to space evenly. Alright, so maybe space evenly. Let me format this. So these are the styles I want to apply, and this time we are using inline styles. Okay, so this is standard React stuff, JSX React stuff. So I'll save this, and then let's visit our page again, and yeah, we can see that the items are now next to each other, and it looks really cool. This looks very decent. It looks very decent for me, but I'm sure there are a lot of things that you can improve with regards to the styling. So the last thing we want to do in this section is to add custom font, right? So instead of having these boring fonts, we want to use some custom fonts. So there are two approaches in which we can do this. So the first is to use a web font such as Google Font or Typekit. Okay, so in our case we are going to use Google Font, and to do this, Google Fonts, most of the fonts are available on npm from the font source package, and that's what we're going to use. So we have to install that particular font we want to use, and then import that in our project, and then we can use it. So let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to import Open Sans. Okay, so that's the font I want to use, and I want to import that. First install that from npm. Alright, so in our project, so in our project, okay, let me get rid of these guys. Yeah, so I'll just shut down my dev server here, clear the terminal, and then install the font, right? So I'll do yarn add font source, Okay, this from the font source package, and then open sans, the name of the font I want to install. Then I'll go ahead and install this. Okay, so whilst this is installing, we can go ahead and do the other stuff. So what we want to do is import this font and then use it. So the best place to import this font I think would be the layout component, because almost all the pages that are rendered on the page uses a layout component. Okay, so what you would want to do is import the font in here, and then you can use the font. Okay, so when this is done installing, we'll go ahead and do that. Great, so here we can see that our font is successfully installed. We can clear the terminal and then start the development server again, and then now we can import the font here and use it. So down here I'm just going to import this. I'll do import and then the name of the font, which is font source, okay, open sans. You can see that here, and then that's what we want to do. And then now we can go ahead and use the font. Okay, so in the global styles, whatever style we apply here is going to affect all the pages that is our layout. So we can just go ahead and add the font here. So we can just set font family, all right, font family to the font that we just installed, which is open sans. Okay, great. So once we do this, we should see our font changing to this particular font. So let's save this, okay, and then let's check it out in the browser. So in here we can see that I don't know if it's visible, but you can see the font is should be a little different. Okay, should be a little, yeah, you can see the changes here. So we are currently using the open sans font as opposed to the boring default font that was there before. Alright, so that's how to use a web font. In the next video, let's look at how to use a custom font from our local computer. Alright, so now let's add a font locally from our computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to download a font from Google Fonts. So I'm going to use Shipori Mincho. This is the font I want to download. So I'll click that, and then I'll download this font locally to my computer. Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and download this to my desktop. Should start downloading, and then once it's downloaded, I'll move the files to the project. Right, so let's go ahead and download this file to your desktop. Yeah, so the download is complete. So the file here, I can go ahead and extract the contents of the file. Okay, so this is the files, and I'm just going to grab the file here, and then I'm just going to use it. So I'll just copy the regular, because that's the only one I'm going to use for now. So I'll just copy this particular file, which should be a TTF file. Okay, so I'll just copy this and then go to our project. So I'll open this project here. So on the desktop, the learn GatsbyJS course, the project Zaki Sports, and then inside the source folder, we'll go inside the source folder here, and then we'll create a folder and call this fonts. Okay, so this will be fonts, and then inside this fonts folder I'm going to paste the fonts that I just copied, right? So Shipori fonts. And then also in here, whilst we are here, maybe we can now just close this and go back to text editor. So we should see the fonts folder here. Okay, so whilst we are here, we can also create a new folder in the source the SRC folder, and we call this CSS. Okay, so if we have any global CSS files, we can put them here. So what I'm going to do is I'll create a typography file, CSS file here. I'm going to call this typography. Is that the spelling for typography? Yeah, .css. Okay, and then I'm going to set up the font for this. So we'll have a font face. Okay, and this should have a font family name of we want to call this Shipori. So Shipori, okay, Mincho. Right, so that's what we want to call the font. And then this font will come from this is going to come from, so we set it an SRC, and this is going to come from the fonts folder that we just created. So this font folder, and then Shipori. Alright, so that's the font. So now that we have this, we can actually use this font family here, right? So this is going to be our custom font, and we want to use this in our layout. So we'll go to our layout component, and then we need to import that particular font, right? Our local font. So in here, I'm just going to import, I'll go ahead and import from our CSS folder, and then we are looking for the typography. Typography, is that the spelling? I think so. The CSS. Okay. So now we've imported our custom font, which we set up here inside this layout component, and then we can just use CSS to override this, or you can just for now let's just comment this out, and then in here we are going to set font family. Okay, font family to Shipori, right? The custom font, the local font that we just added. So Shipori Mincho, and then I'll save this. And then this rebuilds, and then let's see from here, if we reload this page, hopefully we should see our custom font applying. If it doesn't, it means there's something wrong and we would have to fix it. So it looks like our style is now applying, which means we need to fix whatever is wrong, right? So let's figure that out. So in here, our styles is not applying Shipori. Let's make sure we save all the files here, and then also because we added some new files, let's restart our server. Sometimes when you add new files or new folders to the Gatsby setup, you would have to restart your server for them to take effect. So let's do that. I'll just restart the development server, then I'll save this, I'll run this again. Alright, so after restarting the server, let's check if this works, and now you can see that the font is being applied, right? So we have this nice Mincho, Shipori Mincho font. So you can see all of these being the fonts being changed, right? So whilst we are here, we can maybe add some paddings in here. So yeah, let's go to our project, and then in the header components, so where's the header? So in the header component, in the header module, maybe here, in the header module, yeah, we can throw in some padding, right? So let's say padding 0 on the top and bottom, and then 3 rem here, and then we can save, and let's check this out. So we should have these paddings as well. Oh, come on. Great. So we see the paddings here also as well. Yeah, so this you know, it's how we can start application and using all the various different techniques in Gatsby. If you are familiar with the client-server architecture, then you know that in most cases, you know, in most applications, the client application may need to make a request to a server or a backend to either get or save some information, right? And in most cases, usually in most of the time, well, at least previously, most of these APIs or services were REST APIs, okay, representational state transfer APIs. And most of these APIs, how you would communicate with them is they give you an endpoint which determines how you know, the data, that how you should request for the data and what data you are going to get back. Okay, so developers, at least on the client or on the front end, did not have a lot of freedom to customize how they wanted the data or to customize their queries, if you ask me, until you know, 2015, when Facebook released Graphql, created Graphql. It was actually created earlier and used internally in 2012 until 2015, when it was made publicly available as an open source project, right? So GraphQL, let me just talk about this in the context of the client side or on the front end, right? So what GraphQL allows front end developers to do is to, ask for or make queries to ask for exactly the data that they need and get results that are predictable, right, based on the queries that they made. So for example, in here we can just request for tagline on a project and we get exactly that same results back, right? So this allowed front-end developers to customize their requests to get exactly the data that they need without having to make multiple requests to different endpoints on the API, right? So Gatsby GraphQL allows us to query for data from multiple sources in our Gatsby application. So with this, it's possible to query for data from our file system, from external APIs, from content management systems, and so many markdown files, so many different other sources, by simply using GraphQL. Okay. And one cool thing too is that GraphQL gives us an interface which we call the Graphql, that allows you to explore the data that you have in your application. So it actually helps you to build your queries and see the data that you're going to get back even before you actually write the queries in your application. So this is really cool. So in the next video, let's explore how to use the Graphql interface or IDE to query some data. Alright, so in our Zaki Sports application, if you remember correctly, when we run Gatsby develop, we are able to run our project in the development server, right? So when we visited localhost 8000, we're able to see our project. Now, if you scroll up, you see an instruction saying that to open or to view GraphQL, you have to go to localhost slash port 8000 slash underscore GraphQL. Okay, so that's how we can see our GraphQL interface. So let's quickly do that. So in our browser, we are going to open localhost port 8000, the same port, and then this time we are going to do slash underscore 3 underscores and then GraphQL. Okay, so once we hit enter, this opens up our GraphQL interface. Okay, so this GraphQL interface is what will help us explore the data that we have in our application, and all the sources that we can pull in data from using GraphQL, and you can even build our GraphQL queries from here. So this is a very useful tool. You can go to the docs here, and the docs gives you all the queries that you have. So basically in our Gatsby application, we are going to be making queries. Okay, so when you click on the root query here, it gives you so many different sources that you can pull in data from, and these sources are the same things that we have here. So we can query data from all these, so from the file system, from all files directory, so many different sources, and these sources are going to change as and when your application grows, depending on the multiple data sources that you are going to have in your application. So if we later want to pull in data from a CMS, we'll have that option here available as well. So for instance, if I click on the site here, we can see all the available arguments that are on the site, and we can also explore the data that we can get back from the site. So you can see site metadata, all of these stuff. So let's click on site here. We can see that on site we can have access to site metadata, port, and all of these stuff. You can click each of them to explore the data that you get back or what's available in those. So if we click on site metadata, you can also see the data that you can have or can access from this. So that you can access the title, the description, the author, which are all strings, right? So the documentation, this inbuilt documentation easily allows us to explore the data that we have in our application. Likewise, you can use the query builder on the left here to build your queries. Okay, so for instance, if we go to all sites or site, let's use site again as an example, or all site or any site, any of these stuff. So if we go to all sites, for instance, you see the moment we click here, we see the query being built here. All right, and then we can go to edges, and you see it builds edges here. We can go to node, and then you see this here as well. And then on node we can access a few things. We can access site metadata, and from here you can specify the data that you want. So maybe we can specify the author and the description. And then you see this builds our query for us, and then once you can test out your query by clicking this to execute the query, and you see we get some data back. So Graphql is very useful in exploring the data that you have in your application and building your queries to see the data that you get back even before you write those queries. Okay, so let's say we want to query this site metadata in our Gatsby application and display it in the browser, right? So in our Gatsby config.js we have this site metadata, and there's something that, because this file is available in the file system, there's something that you can query using Graphql. Okay, so before I actually do this, I like to explore how to actually make the query in our Graphql interface before writing the query. So let's quickly do that. So in our Graphql, we want to make a query. All right, so the first thing I like to do is first try to explore the data that I want to get from the docs. So from the docs, I want to query for the site metadata. Okay, so where can I find this? So I know that I can find this well, because I know I can just go straight to the site, but if you didn't know, you'd have to click each of these to find out where that data is, right? So I can find this available on site because I can just see site metadata here, right? So if I click on site I can be able to find site metadata. All right, so site, and then on site I can find site metadata, and then on site metadata I can fetch the title, the description, and the author, which is what we have here. All right, so the title, description, and author. So let's write our query. Okay, so first we have to go to site, and then from site we go to site metadata, and then on site metadata we can find we can find the data, the title, description, and all of that. So let me just write the query here and see if that works. So I want to write a query. So basically I write query, the syntax in Graphql, and then you can give your query a name if you want to, but I'll just stick to query. And then what I want to query for is site. Okay, so site, the moment I click here, you see that this expands, right? So under site, I want to fetch get something from the site metadata, which is here. And then on site metadata, you see I can fetch the author, description, and title. So with Graphql, you can specify the data, exactly the data that you need back. So I want to get the author, all right, comma, and then I want to get the description as well, and then let's also get the title. Okay, so we've been able to build this query. So now let's test if this query works, right? So we need to just click here, and then we see we get some data back, right? So it means this is successful. We're able to get some data back from the query that we built. So in the next video, let's look at how we can actually make this query in our application and get this data in display. Now that we know how our query is going to look like, let's query this in our Gatsby application, right? So let's say we want to display the metadata information on our sports page, because currently our sports page has just some dummy title, right? So let's quickly do that. So I'll go to our sports page. It should be in our components somewhere. No, in our pages, sorry. So in our pages, our sports page, and let's say we want to query that data in this component and display it. Okay, so this is very simple to do in Gatsby. Gatsby gives us a few components that we can use to do this. So we first need to import a few things from Gatsby. So I'll import some named components from named imports from Gatsby. Okay, and the first thing we want to get is use static query. Okay, so this is a hook that is provided by Gatsby to be able to make queries in your component. And then because we're also going to use Graphql, we also need to import Graphql. Okay, so once we have these two things, we are set to go. So let's see how we can make a query. So our query is going to look similar to what we have here. Okay, it's basically what we have here, and we want to save the result of that in a variable. So we're going to call that variable data, and this data will be equal to whatever is returned from our query. So we use static query hook here. So use static query hook here, and then inside there we're going to use Graphql to make the query. Okay, so our query will be inside two backticks. Okay, and the backtick is the key left to your the number one key on the keyboard, okay, or just above the tab key. So in here, this is where we are going to write our query. So we can just as well go and copy what we have here and then paste it, and it's going to work exactly. But I'll just go ahead and type this, right? So query, this is exactly what we have in our Graphql interface, and then on our query we want to get the site, and then inside site we want to get site metadata. Okay, and then on site metadata I want to fetch the author, the description, sorry, not descriptions, and then the title. Okay, so these are the things that I want to fetch. So the result of this is going to be saved on this data variable. So to see that this works, let's just log this to the console, right? So we can actually access this stuff. Let me just save this to a variable. Okay, so I'll just call this variable info, and this info is going to contain the information on the site metadata. So to access the site metadata information, we have to do data.site. Okay, data.site metadata. Okay, so that site metadata, like that. Okay, so this is how we access the information on the site metadata. So this is saved on info. Let's just log info to the console to see. So I'll just precede this with a string called info so that we know what we are logging, and then the info data is of the info variable. So let's save this, this rebuilds, and then we go to our application. Let's open our console and then see if we have some data back on our. So let's just reload the page, and hopefully we should get some data back right in our console. Oh, I see we have the data back. So here, when I expand this, we see this is coming from our logs. Okay, so we have author, description, and title, which is just what we fetch from our site site metadata. Okay, so which means we have our data back. That's really impressive. So now we can just display this to our browser. So maybe in the H1, I'll just, instead of just this text, I'll display info dot the title. Okay, so info dot the title, and then maybe we'll use an H for and let's just display info. Why do I keep typing this? Info dot author, and then maybe a paragraph to display the description, right? So this should be info. Oh, come on, info dot description. Okay, so now let's save this and see if we have. Yeah, so you can see Gatsby default starter, and then this and that, and all these is coming from our site metadata, right? So to prove this, we can just go ahead and go to our Gatsby config, which has our site metadata, and then we can edit the text here. So we can say maybe welcome to the sports page. Okay, and then the description, we can just say content coming from our GraphQL query. Okay, GraphQL query. And then the author, maybe I'll just do @Zach. Okay, so we save this and then head over here, and then we should see that welcome to the sports page at Zach, and then content coming from our GraphQL. So basically, this is how to query data using GraphQL from different sources. We'll look at how to query data from other sources as well, Markdown files and contentful CMS and different places.
Hi again. We've come to the end of this Gatsby JS tutorial. In this tutorial, we started by explaining what Gatsby JS is and how that is different from other similar frameworks such as Create React App and Next.js. We then went forward to set up all the tooling we need to get our first Gatsby site running. We looked at the Gatsby CLI and how that helps us to create new Gatsby sites and how to run our application. We also saw how to create new pages in Gatsby and how sub-components and page layouts can make our lives easier. We then used Gatsby's link component to help us navigate between our pages. After that, we covered all the different ways we can style our Gatsby application by using CSS modules, styled components, SAS or SCSS, external CSS, inline CSS, and then how to add our own custom fonts. Then finally, we explored how to use the Graphql client to query our site metadata. We even went further to query the site metadata in our components, page components, and display it to the screen. I'm going to leave a link to the source code in the video description so you can always go back and refer to the code if you have any issues. Also, don't hesitate to reach out or post a comment whenever you get stuck or need help. If you've made it this far, then you are ready to dive deeply into Gatsby JS. When you enroll in this full course, you'll receive 12.5 more hours of quality video content, 15 helpful downloadable resources, and certification for this course. You will learn how to use Gatsby plugins to do cool stuff like lazy loading images and making your site SEO friendly. You will see how to do more advanced queries using the GraphQL playground and how to query and display content in our component from Markdown and a contentful CMS. I'll teach you how to build dynamic web apps using Gatsby JS by consuming real live third-party APIs. I'll also teach you how to deploy your finished projects to the cloud so that it can be publicly accessible. In this course, I'm always available to help you out when you get stuck or to answer all your questions in the Q&A forum of this course. So go ahead and click on the link which you'll find in the video description to enroll in this course for just $12.99. Or you can also use the promo code YPROMO. That also works as well. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and I'll see you inside this course.